Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 31st of October, and joining me on this edition are assistant editor Steve Withers.
We've got to find Jack. There's only 365 days left until next Halloween.
Audio reviewer Ed Selly.
Jack, please, I'm only an elected official here. I can't make decisions by myself.
And special guest Mark Bortright.
I have every confidence in you.
It's Halloween, whatever that means these days. Seemingly it means sending cards to each other now.
Really?
I don't know if anybody else noticed, but did you notice that there's Halloween cards in the shops? I noticed that.
Chancing their arm.
Anything these days to send cards or do anything. When did we start trick-or-treating people? When did we take this?
When American films told us about it, basically.
I mean, it's all trick-or-treat these days, and it's like, that's so American. I mean, it was never like that when I was a kid.
We think about it, Phil. I mean, look at this month, November. I mean, what's happening in November? American holiday. Thanksgiving, nothing to do with us whatsoever, but we've imported Black Friday, which in America is a holiday, so it makes sense that we'll go shopping, but we're going to have a Black Friday as well. I bet you not before long we'll start having Thanksgiving. Any excuse for another holiday, another slap-up meal,
yeah, but
another excuse to sell cards.
But isn't Thanksgiving when they defeated us?
No,
it's when they killed all the idiots.
All right, okay.
Celebrating their first harvest. But we could suppose turn it on its head and give thanks for the fact that some of the crackpots that went over in the 17th century are no longer anything to do with us.
Sadly, they're now running the most powerful country in the world. So that
hey, look, easy come, easy go.
A festival around exporting Puritans.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it is Halloween, and we've been doing our bit in terms of horror. I mean, when did horror become? Well, I suppose it is a little bit, isn't it?
Well, no, Halloween obviously is connected to. Was it All Hallows Eve was the original? It's been shortened to Halloween, but it's connected to spirits and the dead, and so obviously that does tie in nicely with horror. But I guess for us, for our generation, there's no question. For me, Halloween, trick or treating, and horror all started in 1978 with Halloween. That's where it kind of all gelled together nicely. So John Carpenter's to blame for all this, in my opinion.
Fair enough. I think he's man enough to be able to take that.
Yeah, he's all right. He did make one of the best horror films ever. So, in terms of, actually two, if you count Halloween as well, but The Thing, work of pure genius. So.
He's turning out some great albums these days.
I was just going to say, yes. have you actually listened to his albums? Because the last two have been really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah, it's a really good work. And he's on tour, isn't he? He's touring. He's playing in the UK, I think, quite soon. So I'd be quite.
He is a veritable Renaissance man.
He is indeed.
Good stuff. Right, let's move on. Competitions. What can we win, Mark?
I did it last week.
Did you? All right. What can we win, Ed?
Right.
Take a deep breath.
Do you know what? I might pause in the middle rather than trying to do this in one sentence. There are 3 copies of Gods of Egypt on 3D Blu-ray. That's open to all members, but you'll need to get your skates on because it closes on the 2nd of November. There are 3 copies of 1 Million Years BC on Blu-ray. Again, open to all members. You've got until the 4th of November, so do Gods of Egypt first, then get onto that one. 3 copies of Alloys on Blu-ray, again 4th of November, open to all members. 3 copies of Lucifer Season 1 on a delightfully retro DVD ensemble. That's open to the 9th of November. And then 3 copies of Independence Day Resurgence on 3D Blu-ray. That's open to all members until the 16th of November. And there's some new boilerplate here. All competitions open to residents of the UK, Ireland and Isle of Man. So if you're not on any of those land masses, don't enter, basically.
Yeah, and it should be pointed out that's to win 1 of 3 copies, not 3 copies. You don't win 3 copies. Yeah, it's 1 of 3 copies.
It worries me that we need to explain that.
Well, you have to these days, Ed. You have to explain everything in terms and conditions, and you could lose your house if you don't keep up repayments and all the rest of it.
Some
Do
competitions
not iron clothes whilst on body, and other stirring messages for our time.
Do not smoke a cigarette while filling your car with petrol, that kind of thing. Yeah, I should point out that some competitions, none of these that are listed currently, but some in the past, have only been available to open to people living in the UK. And so some Irish members have been a bit annoyed because they couldn't actually get on the competition. So, but all these are open to people who live in the UK, Ireland, and the Isle of Man.
So there.
Never been to
the
the
Channel Islands, you're out of luck.
You've never been to Ireland?
Well, I was thinking about the Channel Islands. Should that not be included?
I don't know, maybe.
They can buy their own copies with all the tax they're saving.
I was just going to say, I've never been to the Isle of Man. Has anybody else here been to the Isle of Man?
Yeah, years ago.
Right, okay.
As I understand it, it's incredibly cool during TT week and kind of just a bit weird and craggy island-like on the other 51 weeks.
I had a friend who was
No
visiting.
offence.
visiting the Isle of Man because we had a banking operation there and a back office operation in the Isle of Man, and he was visiting, and he was being driven by a taxi driver across this little bridge outside Douglas, I think it is, where it's meant to be, I think it's the ferry bridge or something like that. And as they were driving over the bridge, the cab driver said, wave hello to the ferries. And my friend said, bollocks, I'm not doing that. And the cab driver ground to a halt, got out of the cab and said, I'm not crossing this bridge until you wave to the ferries. So he had to wave to the ferries, and then he got back in and drove off.
Well,
so,
you
know. I think there might be a strange bunch up there.
It's an odd one, isn't it?
And the other one is I've never been to Ireland.
Well,
I'd love to
go
there.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I'd love
Absolutely.
to go, but it's just finding the time to do it, you know. And
It's also, I would say, it's expensive at the best of times and biblically expensive right now. Although you can do Northern Ireland
You're in
and
the
then
north,
just
okay, south.
dip into the Republic on a quick basis.
Belfast, fantastic city. I really enjoyed my visit there, and Dublin's a great laugh. So yeah, we should definitely do Ireland.
yeah, I mean, talking about Brexit and all the rest of it, the biggest Mickey take I've seen so far was Apple's unveiling of the new MacBooks yesterday. I don't know if anybody else saw this, but I've got a 2012 Retina 15-inch MacBook Pro, which it's done fantastic service for the last 4 years. It's getting a bit slow now, so I'm looking probably in the next year or so it's going to have to be replaced again. So I was interested in this event. I went onto Apple Store and did a similar spec to the one that I have at the minute. So the one that I bought was £2,100. That was back in 2012. To replace it, £3,100.
Splendid. I don't think that's just currency fluctuations either. If you look at what some of the comments that American people have been making about some of the pricing for this gen, I don't think everyone's exactly blown away. And someone did point out is that obviously this OLED display bar is quite cool, but it's supposed to be adaptive and then respond to your usage patterns. So how long for some people before they turn it on and it just brings a row of porn icons up to take you straight to the site of your choice?
Yeah.
I mean, I know this is heresy to say, and I know that you two in particular will almost certainly never agree with me on this, but I thought Microsoft's conference was an altogether more exciting and more dynamic and more interesting in terms of where they're going than the Apple one was. I mean, admittedly, these days, Apple is the incumbent and it's Microsoft that has something to prove, but I thought that Surface PC in particular was, that's a pretty cool thing.
Very iMac-like, though.
Well, it is and it isn't, in so much as there's only so many things you can do with mounting a screen, I grant you that. But in terms of the facilities that they have enabled it with, it does in some ways make OS X look pretty cautious by comparison.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's disappointing. That's all I can say about Apple.
Well, yeah, because I mean, we've always known Apple products are priced quite high. I mean, they're a sort of a luxury brand, effectively, aren't they, as far as computing goes? But it just seems as if this year they've been slightly taking the piss as far as pricing goes.
Slightly.
And I mean, the price of the iPhone 7, that was pretty toppy as well. So,
the problem is it's not stopping you from buying the stuff.
Oh,
it would only take one quarter of people going, do you know what, your pricing is wildly out of line. Let's ignore what's happening here on Calamity Island with our own currency. For places which haven't been indulging in a spot of ritualistic suicide. If they just said, you can't justify this, but they've still got lunatics queuing out the doors. They're fine. They can charge what they like because you lot will pay for it. And
I don't know. I'm seriously looking at. I even looked at a lower spec, and you're still £2,500. So I'm kind of struggling because I really don't want to be paying that type of money.
It's a lot of dough, isn't it, for a laptop?
I will put my
sort yourself a Hackintosh.
I will put my hands up and say I've had absolutely no issues whatsoever with the MacBook Pro that I have. It's worked every time. Haven't had any issues. It's never crashed on me in terms of like blue screen of death or anything like that. You get the occasional program that crashes, but what doesn't do that? But everything else has just been absolutely fantastic. So from that point of view, I definitely want to buy back into Apple because it's been so excellent in terms of reliability and getting the work done that I need to do and all the rest of it. But this, it's just, I think you can take things too far, and I think they've just taken things too far. And I'll keep an eye on it, and hopefully we might see a bit of a correction if people are thinking the same as I'm thinking and just think, well, that's just too much.
But interestingly, did you see that they announced, I think, iPhone 7 sales have exceeded expectations? So clearly the message hasn't got through yet.
The only difference with iPhone 7, isn't it, that the sales will also include ones through contract.
Yeah. Yes, it will.
Whereas, let's face it, there's no equivalent for the laptop sales. You have to go and buy the thing in its entirety there and then. Yeah, and as Phil points out, it's a stiff number that they're asking you to find the money for.
Yeah, it's a fair point then.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on with hardware news. And the BBC are going to go Ultra HD 4K on the iPlayer, apart from you, Steve.
Yeah. I guess this was kind of inevitable because it's the easiest way of delivering 4K initially is to do it over IP, basically, isn't it? And obviously BBC got the iPlayer in place. It's pretty much ubiquitous in this country, at least. And so the infrastructure is already there. I imagine it's relatively straightforward for them to start delivering it over via iPlayer. And they presumably have a back catalogue. I know from watching the behind-the-scenes documentaries and a lot of nature programs that they've been using things like RED cameras and they've been shooting it 4K. And apparently Planet Earth 2, which looks amazing in the trailers, was been given a high dynamic range pass. So, sounds amazing. I mean, I just wish I could enjoy it, but unfortunately for me, that's not going to be an option.
So for the rest of us, do actually have good internet. I'm going to say I'm really looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to Planet Earth 2 in 4K. I think that'll look absolutely amazing.
If I had a 4K television, yeah, I dare say it would be. It's good to see that they are. It's in many ways it's savvy BBC in so much as Steve points out, they're using an already well-established and ubiquitous medium. It's the simplest delivery system, and it still shows them paying attention, trying to give value added. I think it's a very good idea. What will be interesting is whether they can. Obviously, what with Sky Q and getting its act in gear and starting to do some 4K delivery. Be interesting to see if they can start it like the equivalent back in the day of the HD channel. Be interesting to see if there's some sort of 4K equivalent starting to that gets a segment section from the BBC on the Sky roster as well.
Interesting that they're talking about aside from the visual aspects, they're also talking about object-based audio as well. So it looks like the BBC are, along with many other broadcasters, are going for it in terms of taking television to the next level. We're only in a couple of years' time, we could well be watching TV, 4K, obviously, HDR, wider color gamuts, higher frame rates, maybe 10-bit, and object-based audio. So, TV really is going to be taking a quantum leap in terms of performance, I think, over the next couple of years, which is, I guess, exciting for everybody.
Well, maybe. We'll see. You're not a priority, you and Jane Austen.
No, I appreciate that I'm not a priority.
I'm going to pick up on what Dante01 said on the forum as well, is the fact that maybe they should be looking at getting regional broadcasts up to HD in nature, rather than looking at UHD and the rest of it. And there's very little at the moment is made in 5.1 on the BBC, yet they're talking about object-based audio. So it's only going to be for flagship items, really.
Yeah.
So I kind of agree with what he's saying, which is, you would think that they would try and sort out everything else infrastructure-wise in terms of HD before making the leap to the next level.
Well, it kind of depends whether you believe that you have to establish standards across the country to start with, or whether it's in fact these things kind of create a momentum by almost the top end dragging everyone up with them. I think the BBC very much have that approach, which is trying to push the limits with certain things, and you see it with all broadcasters, and then it kind of drags people along with them.
Yeah, I think something we've talked about the BBC and the license fee quite a bit, and I think we've forgotten something important here, which is forgetting the programming for a second. The BBC, probably more than any other body over the last, since TV was invented, has done more to push technology forward in terms of TV. You look at almost every single major TV broadcasting advancement over the last 60, 70 years, the BBC either created it or was actively involved in its creation and development. So
I think
they have a certain responsibility, I think, and a pride in the fact that they are generally at the cutting edge in terms of TV technology. And so this is just another example of it, isn't it?
I think Sky would have a few things to say about that.
No, they push things recently, but if you look at technology, they tend to take things that other people have developed and then maybe improve on it or do it on a bigger scale. But I don't know.
We're moving towards.
No, I was going to say I don't know how involved Sky have actually been in standards or creating technology. I think they just use it and then make you pay through the nose for it. That's different.
Well, no, but they do actually bring it to market in a meaningful sense of the word, in a format that usually works.
See, the problem is with the BBC, they can do all the R&D they like, but they have to also remember that the license payer is paying for it, and the license payer has to be able to receive the new technology before the BBC can launch the new technology.
Yeah, whereas, true. But do you think Sky would have invested?
Sky doesn't have that drawback. Sky can make the investment and then get the subscribers on board.
I don't know how much investment Sky would make in something if they didn't know it was definitely going to make them money there, whereas the BBC presumably also invest in things.
Well, I don't know. They did have the 3D channel that run 24 hours a day in 3D. BBC didn't have any of that.
Yeah, they did it, but it's not like I don't know. Yeah, because they could, and they're in a position to do it. But that's only for their subscribers, right? It's not like they're doing it for everybody. You're still paying for their service.
Well, you're paying for the BBC.
But the thing is, and also the thing is, if I don't pay for Sky, I just don't get Sky. That's fine. If I don't pay for the BBC, I go to prison.
Yeah.
And so you should.
There are 167 people currently in prison in the UK for non-payment of TV license, for not subsidising a state broadcaster.
Start a charity single forum, mate.
Hang on, 120 people. You could pay their bill then and get them out.
Free the BBC 167.
I just think that is utterly absurd. But
I do as well, Ed.
Look, I do agree people shouldn't be in prison for not paying the licence fee, but I also think that the BBC has done an important job over decades in terms of pushing television technology forward, and I think they just try to continue to do that.
We've paid for it, though.
Well, I don't mind paying for it. We're benefiting.
You decided for all of us, have you?
All right. Yeah. Good for you.
I mean, admittedly, I'm in a slightly better mood with the BBC because MasterChef The Professionals kicks off on November the 8th. And is
that all you think about, Ed, is food?
When MasterChef The Professionals, we've had this conversation. It has everything. It's got delusional lunatics, X Factor style at the first part of it. People whose ambitions wildly outdistance their actual talent, and then by the end of it, you've got people doing things that are just unbelievable, and it's all shot in porno food vision.
Yeah, it is.
And you've got like weird facial expressions from Greg Wallace. What more could you possibly want from a television program? It's fantastic. I mean, I know the thing is that you critique it from a position. I don't think you've actually watched any recent installment of it. Trust me on this. It's bloody marvelous. It's By the same token, I watched the first episode of The Young Pope last night on Sky.
Oh yeah,
which was very peculiar. It was like a sort of Brando-esque Apocalypse Now monologue from people wearing cassocks. It was very strange. Now, I'm not saying I won't give it another go, though. It was strangely compelling, but very odd. Very odd.
I've never understood watching food programs on TV, no matter what they are, because at the end of the day, it just makes you hungry. And I've never understood why people watch that. And
no, there is a perverse joy in watching people perform exquisite artistry with food whilst eating a microwave curry.
I still think they should do what you suggested, Ed, and have the skills test be just a saucepan and an egg.
Yeah, you've got 15 minutes to boil an egg, and then just watch them mentally implode as they work out what they should do with the other sort of 11 and a half minutes.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant.
I just hope, as I say, it's you can keep your bake-offs wherever they go and whatever the BBC replaces it with. MasterChef The Professionals is, I do agree with you, Phil, that there is far too much food programming on television. But MasterChef The Professionals, it has elements beyond that make it tremendously compelling, and it's just great. And I won't hear a word said against it.
I do quite like MasterChef, largely because it kind of makes. I don't know if anyone remembers the character from Vicar of Dibley, the mad old lady who used to put things like Marmite in cakes.
Yes.
But that seems vaguely tame compared to some MasterChef recipes.
Well, yeah, in MasterChef, especially right at the beginning when you've got someone who, I'm a self-trained pub chef and I'm now going to do something utterly bizarre. And needless to say, they go, this is completely shit. I love it. I'm sure many people listening to this podcast agree. Many people listening to this podcast don't agree. That's the richness of human variety right there.
I have to say that we're kind of getting a bit Star Wars with the whole food on TV thing. So I think we need to call it a day. Otherwise, it's going to get too much, I think. So let's move on.
No, that'll be when a teaser trailer, a teaser spot appears on BBC One, and I demand that we spend 15 minutes discussing.
Fine, you can have 15 minutes discussing it if you like. I'll go and cook something.
Bacon sandwich time.
Yeah, bacon butty. Right, moving on.
Anyway,
this is Friday morning. I haven't had my breakfast yet. I've just mentioned bacon butty, and now I want one. Microsoft are going to add Dolby Atmos to the Xbox One and the Xbox One S, Mark.
Yes, when the Xbox One S launched, it didn't. Well, it currently obviously doesn't support direct bit streaming for audio. There's been word that it's coming soon, though that has actually been mentioned before. But it's definitely, should we say, part of their timetable now, and it looks like it'll probably be sometime 2017. Hopefully, it's early 2017. There's an update planned to enable bit streamed audio on both the Xbox One and Xbox One S. The latter obviously has the UHD Blu-ray player and HDR compatibility. So fingers crossed. They've said bitstream audio pass-through, including Dolby Atmos support, is coming soon to Xbox One with our Blu-ray player. Yeah. No word on DTSX, but obviously people are thinking hopefully that'll be just there as well.
It's strange how that's completely absent in any of the comment and the coverage, isn't it? It's just Dolby Atmos. I mean, obviously what they mean is they're going to bitstream Dolby True HD, which is what carries Dolby Atmos. Presumably, if it also does DTS HD master audio, then it can deliver DTSX.
If it can do master audio, but I don't think it does master audio, that's the problem.
That's what I'm thinking. So is it not going to? Are they not going to pay DTS license fee to do DTS HD master audio?
It was it was a very carefully worded statement, and the fact they say with our Blu-ray player at the end, you think, well, if you're adding extraneous words on which people would have thought were obvious, why would you not say, just make that perfectly clear? It just seems a little bit strange.
And I'm wondering if that's tying in, because we've talked about this before, about certain things like the Samsung Atmos soundbar doesn't support DTS master audio. And
are you suggesting that Dolby maybe have a clause in their contract, Steve?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I'm finding a strange and interesting trend developing here where Dolby appears to be the dominant format and DTS seem to be getting sidelined a bit. Now, whether that's Dolby in some way, or maybe because I've heard rumors DTS have been asking for too much in terms of licensing fees, I don't know. But it is interesting that that wording is. I was reading it and thinking, like, okay, that's very carefully worded, and they specifically are not mentioning anything to do with DTS, and I found that interesting. I guess time will tell.
Do you think it's a case though with like we saw with the high def audio formats when Blu-ray was in its infancy, that perhaps people aren't as bothered by this idea of choice as perhaps audiophiles are? That in fact the inclusion of one format of some degree is sufficient.
Possibly. Yeah, and also I think it reflects the fact that if you look at the number of Ultra HD Blu-rays released to date, and also Blu-rays with immersive audio soundtracks, almost, I can't remember the exact figure, but I'd say it's probably at least 80 to 90% at least are Dolby Atmos. I mean, there's very, very few DTSX discs, and in the most recent stuff that's been released on Ultra HD Blu-ray, they've all had Dolby Atmos soundtracks, and I haven't seen DTSX soundtrack for quite a while now. So that's that would suggest that, at least in terms of support and the actual content out there, Dolby Atmos is the key format that you want on your machine or soundbar or whatever. I think Mark's probably right too. I think outside of our little, rarefied world of the AV enthusiasts, where we think, oh, DTSX, why haven't they got DTSX? Most people have never heard of DTSX. They may have heard of Dolby Atmos, but probably not either. And you're absolutely right, Mark. I think the majority of people who are going to buy an Xbox One S, that'll be fine. Dolby Atmos, great. And I think that's about as far as it'll go. So could well be a factor. I think it could be a combination of all those factors, Phil, to be honest.
Let's move things on. The game charging £5 for 10 minutes on the new PlayStation virtual reality. When I first saw this, I thought, you can't do that. But then thinking about, game stores full of horrible kids who would want to put their sticky fingers over everything and would never get out the way for other people to have a look at stuff and all the rest of it. You can kind of see where Game are coming from on this one, and of course that £5 is refundable if you then buy the VR. So I can kind of see where they're coming from with this. It's just, it'd be an unfortunate trend to start with, I think, if you then apply that to hi-fi demos and home cinema demos and taking out a car for a test drive and having to pay for it and that kind of thing. Oh.
Well, people have an inherent distrust/dislike of game, largely due to kind of the prices that they charge and the amount they'll offer for trading and things like that. But it seems perfectly reasonable to me. They've got to kind of man these little demo pods. It's not like kind of the days where I just go upstairs in HMV and play Ready to Rumble on the Dreamcast during my lunch hour and then say I was considering buying it and leave. It's simply a fact that you have to have someone there who's going to make sure that you have, number one, that you're seeing the demos in the best possible light. That they have to they might have to adjust the headset, they might have to explain things to you. It's not something you can just kind of pick up, plonk on, and say, "Oh, I tried it for 2 minutes and I got motion sick" or something. Like with someone going to a retail electronics store and say, "Oh, I looked at these two tellies side by side and I thought one looked rubbish," and then walking out or something. They want to sell this. These things are selling well, and so therefore, £5 that is refundable, or £15 for 30 minutes, which is exactly the same amount, like a kind of buy 3, pay for 3 deal. But they've also got to make sure that they keep these things clean as well, because it is technology that you're wearing. And there was a little kind of rumor going around online about potentially, I don't know, it might be a completely apocryphal tale, but whenever there's something like this where there's a scare story of health where someone claimed to have caught eye herpes from a PSVR demo unit, that's enough to make people think twice about it. And if you think about people who would normally go and just kind of try something like that in a store, if it was completely free, you want someone on hand with a couple of alcohol wipes just to make sure it's clean. So I think it's perfectly reasonable.
There's a world of difference between charging for a test of something where really, to be honest, the only supervision required is to ensure you don't run off with it, and for something where there's a bit more sort of involvement and all the things that Mark listed there. I don't think this is a precedent which is going to see us being charged for everything. I think it's a pretty logical move to ensure a good hit rate with something which is quite specialised.
What I was going to say was that having essentially done this myself last week at a friend's house, so I didn't have to pay £5 for the privilege. What I can say is that the PSVR is something you have to experience to truly appreciate it. Because I've been, like I said last week, I've kind of poo-pooed the whole idea of VR. But when I actually used it, put it on and experienced it, and the immersive nature of the experience and just what it adds to gaming, incredible. So I can understand why they want people to try it. So they'll sell more units, obviously. And in order to do that, as you guys have just said, they need to obviously supervise it. It needs to be done correctly. You need to give the person the best possible experience so that they do appreciate it and then go and buy it. Because another friend of mine also tried my other friend's PSVR, and he had it on for about 10 seconds and took it off and said, "No, I'm feeling it makes me feel sick," which is madness, really, because I can't understand that. But it's I can understand why they're doing it. Initially, I thought cheeky buggers, but actually, it kind of makes sense.
I just hope it doesn't move out and then we're charged for everything, because that's it ruined my weekends going test driving cars. I've had to pay for the privilege.
I was about to say, because you go into game quite a lot.
Yeah, just as much as you, Steve. I had to laugh as well when you said you're going to buy one of these PSVRs. You're going to use it for a week and it'll get forgotten about. I can just see it now.
I don't know, actually. I think this one.
How often do you use your PS for?
Yeah, but this is different.
How's it different?
I'm crap at using a controller, but if I'm holding those hand things and I'm immersed in it, I actually might be better. I don't know. I think this might work on me. This could be the beginning of the end.
Okay, well, I think we need to get Laura to be taking some photographs or video, and we'll be posting it along with one of the podcasts once it's
We'll have a competition and see who uses, whether I use my PSVR more than you use your Odeon.
My multipass. Multipass.
Yeah. Let's see who wins that one, shall we?
Okay. I accept your challenge, sir.
Challenge accepted.
Right, just to wrap up on some gaming stuff as well. Nintendo did something. Mark, tell us about that.
Okay, yeah. After the 3-minute reveal trailer for the Switch, which obviously dropped before their quarterly investors meeting, it seems like now they're kind of hunkering down for the winter, and they've decided that January will be the time to reveal everything about the Switch. There's an event planned in Japan which will be the 13th UK time, where press and kind of media partners, investors, that kind of thing, can see it, and they will be revealing price, launch lineup, that kind of thing, partnerships, and it seems like it will be live streamed, and then 14th and 15th there will be a chance, I think, for the public to kind of try it. They want everyone to kind of interact with it. They didn't want to show everything too soon, and it's really just kind of a smart move from them, which allows them to focus on the Christmas period for the existing consoles, so they can continue to push things like Pokemon Sun and Moon, which are coming out on the 3DS, and you don't want to really hammer home the idea that the 3DS might be, kind of slowly pushed into the background after Pokemon Go on smartphones kind of saw a spike in 3DS sales, and they've got Super Mario Run expected on iOS in December as well. So they're going to have a Christmas period of selling their wares, and then in the new year, they're going to be revealing things about the Switch.
Right, so basically wait till January is what you're saying.
Yeah, and they also seem to have picked the day, which I'm fairly sure someone said that January the 12th or the 13th is technically the most depressing day of the year, but we'll see.
I'll probably still be full of jet lag come that day. Anyway, end of the month, Mark. So your game of the month is?
I'm going for Battlefield 1. I am truly terrible generally at competitive first-person shooters. I haven't really been into one since kind of the days of Team Fortress 2. However, I like the atmosphere, the period atmosphere. I like they've got lots of little details right there. As the community develops, it should obviously get better. Early days, you're having lots of kind of new players to it, and people like myself kind of crashing planes into the ground and then quickly quitting the server and things like that. But it's got everything that you'd want from a kind of period warfare game. The impact.
Is there
ground.
an ultra realistic SOM mode where you get up out of a trench and immediately get shot, and it doesn't matter what you do, that's what happens?
Funnily enough, well, there's a map in Sinai in the desert, which is just pretty much exclusively populated by snipers at times. So it's just a case of running for 5 seconds and then getting shot. So yeah, it does kind of replicate that at times.
The absolute futility of trench warfare. I have to say the adverts look fantastic. I mean, I don't have the means to play either at any of these games, but that looked really good, and the Forza Horizon thing gave me a moment of wistfulness, but I don't have the time to do all the other things I'm supposed to be doing, so yeah.
Yeah, talking about things that you're supposed to be doing, Ed, you can answer this question. Are hi-fi manufacturers desirable assets these days?
This is a bit of an odd one, isn't it? I don't know if anyone else caught this. It's one of the rare moments where me following Reuters on Twitter had something pertaining to my actual working existence. But there was this rumour going around that Samsung were trying to buy Focal. Now, Samsung have since sort of been popped up to say, no, we're not doing anything like that. But generally speaking, Reuters doesn't report stuff that is purely imaginary. So they must have had credible reason to do so. And this is on the back of Bowers & Wilkins being purchased a few months ago now. It's starting to ask the interesting question, are some of the larger hi-fi manufacturers, I'm not suggesting that the two people in a shed style entities are going to be affected by this, but in an environment where many companies are looking to bolster their portfolios with brands that can bring in stable income, over a period of time, are some of the larger hi-fi companies suddenly quite desirable assets on the open market because they can develop products that have a lifespan which is incredibly long, judged by the standards of most things that Samsung make, and some of the technology and expertise that they have can be then used in a variety of other locations. So it's obviously it's an interesting question. If Samsung aren't going to buy Focal, are they looking at buying somebody else? And are we going to see some more of these transactions starting to take place as people realise that, it's never going to be incredibly lucrative, but it's stable in a way that so many other segments of consumer electronics aren't, and that may or may not start to have an effect on companies being able to make use of technology, which was hitherto very difficult for them to do because it wasn't part of their sort of undertaking. But if you would imagine Focal, and with that name, because they own the two companies are now the same group, having access to things like the quality of OLED that the S7 phone makes use of, and so on and so forth, it just begins to have an effect on the quality of those products versus companies which haven't got got access to a similar sort of technological sugar daddy. So I think this is an interesting one. I don't, at the time of this podcast being broadcast, I don't think the Samsung purchase of Focal is going to happen. All signs seem to be that
it just seems such a weird purchase to me that I don't see the fit there at all, because you would think Samsung would be going for a bigger brand name than Focal.
Well, in the UK, we kid ourselves that they aren't that big, whereas they are. They are a significant sized company with a significant sort of significant turnover and revenue. But more significantly than that, the amount of R&D and development and patent work that they do. Some of the work that they've done with compact drivers and so on and so forth would make a huge amount of sense in trying to get, say, more sound out of an ultra-thin television, or being able to produce very elegant sound, sound bars that were optional extras for the high-end televisions and things like that. And then obviously they do earphone and headphone work which would work for the phone and tablet side of things. There is actually, in Focal's case, across a large sort of swathe of technology, they do actually find themselves active in a number of locations. So it does make some sense, and I do think that we will see a purchase of this nature, and other tie-ins of this type start to come to the fore. As I say, it's a access to stable revenue and some beneficial technology, and at the moment it's not that overpriced, which by the standards of the market is quite good. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, cool. We'll keep an eye on that one. Interesting that Samsung are looking at it. They've been spending quite a bit of time, Steve, on audio products and so on. And we'll have to say that because they've been spending time on their audio products, they are actually getting really quite good.
Yeah, no, they a few years ago they made a very public declaration that they wanted to be as dominant in audio as they were at the time and still are in television. And it's taken a bit of time to get there. But for example, the the K950 Atmos soundbar that I reviewed relatively recently, that was completely built in-house. That was all done at their facility in California, and they developed the whole thing themselves. And I think that it would make sense for them if they want R&D in particular, if they want more technology. I don't necessarily mean that they want the Focal name, perhaps, but they would probably be very interested in maybe the technology behind it, or the R&D teams, and or the expertise that they've got. Because I think the one area where they've spent a lot of time recently and where they've got greater ambitions is in terms of actual speakers. So, yeah, there could be some fire with that smoke.
End of the month, Ed. What's your album and vinyl choices this month?
Album of the month, and I didn't think I'd say this, Kings of Leon, their new album, is a really impressive return to form after two albums that actually haven't been very good, if we're honest, sort of like a Southern States U2. The latest album, Walls, is a properly good listen. It's on all the streaming services if you want to see what I'm on about. It goes back to some of the intrinsic joy of the first two albums, which, regardless of what the band does after that, are still cracking pieces of music. I think it really stands out as them rediscovering their groove, having a bit of fun, doing the same sort of plays with lyrics and bass work that they were doing in the early days. I was really taken aback by how good it was. I really enjoyed it, and I've ordered a copy on vinyl, but it's not my vinyl release of the month. I think this might be of more interest to you, Phil. Is a reissue of all of the early Chemical Brothers albums. So Exit Planet Dust through to I think it goes all the way to We Are the Night. It doesn't do the most recent two, but the price of those early Chemical Brothers albums on vinyl, you were paying quite a lot of money for tatty copies. These aren't cheap. They're about 22, 23 quid each, but they do appear to be excellent pressings. I'll be picking up the first two because they are absolutely fantastic albums. And the work that's gone into them, they're out now. They seem to be extremely good. That would be my recommendation for Vinyl of the Month.
Excellent. Good stuff. So that wraps up hardware for this week. And next, we're going to talk movie news. What's at the cinema, Steve?
Well, this week I went to go and see Doctor Strange, which is the second film in Phase 3 of Marvel's cinematic universe, and introduces a completely new character, Dr. Stephen Strange, played by Benedict Cumberbatch. Now, recently they've been avoiding what would be called origin films. They introduced both Black Panther and Spider-Man into the MCU within Captain America: Civil War, but Doctor Strange most definitely is an origin story. It covers how he becomes how Doctor Strange, the surgeon, becomes Doctor Strange, the wizard, mystic, if you like. But it really had to be, because it doesn't just introduce a new character; it introduces a whole new realm to the MCU. It introduces this concept of magic, which they do actually try and address in a more scientific way by referring to it basically as multidimensional universes. And there's a sort of a technical aspect to it, which makes it less like Harry Potter and more like Iron Man, which kind of makes sense. But it does introduce this whole realm of possibilities. And in that sense, it has vastly broadened the MCU. And so you really did have to sort of start from the beginning just to explain what's going on. But I think it's going to make for some really interesting storytelling and ideas going down the road. Because, I mean, there was I don't want to give anything away in terms of the stingers at the end. That they always have the little scenes that sort of trailer the next coming Marvel movies. But you can see how it's going to tie into certain other films within their cinematic universe. So I think it's going to be really interesting. The film itself, I really enjoyed. It's very, very different. It's Doctor Strange, I believe, started in the comics in the 60s. So it's a very psychedelic, trippy vibe to it, which they've carried over into the film in many respects. They've even got a nice little clip of Pink Floyd's Interstellar Overdrive on the soundtrack early on in the film, which I really liked. It's very humorous. There's some great jokes in it. The visuals are absolutely stunning. I think this is a film, ordinarily, I went to go and see it in 2D because I don't really like going to see 3D conversions. It was shot in 2D but converted in post. However, this film, I think, much like Ant-Man, is a film that really will benefit from the addition of 3D. So I regret not seeing 2D. I might go and see it again in 3D because the trippy visuals and some of the stuff that goes on will look amazing in 3D. The cast is superb. Tilda Swinton's great in it, as always. Chiwetel Ejiofor, I think is how you pronounce his name, is also really good. And as I said, Benedict Cumberbatch is excellent. So
is he actually just Benedict Cumberbatch with a beard, or does he genuinely throw himself into being Stephen Strange?
I think he does try and throw himself into being Stephen Strange. The only problem is that he's doing his American accent, and through the first 10 minutes I kept thinking, who does that? He sounds like somebody else. And I realised he sounds identical to Hugh Laurie doing his American accent in House, which is slightly off-putting initially. But no, he does throw himself into it quite well, actually, and you kind of forget it's Benedict Cumberbatch, well, to a degree. He looks the part, definitely, by the end with the beard and everything, the cloak and all that sort of stuff. He really does look the part. But I really enjoyed it. It was a fun movie, some amazing visuals. It's a bit trippy and out there at times, very, very different, as I said, from the previous Marvel movies, but that's a good thing. I think we needed a change, and overall, like I said, I enjoyed it, and it is surprisingly funny as well, and it does tie in various name checks to certain things. It does tie in with the whole universe, so yeah, worth checking out. And if you do decide to go and see it, I definitely recommend checking it out in 3D, and I'm looking forward to getting it on Blu-ray to add to my Marvel collection.
4K.
You mean 4K Blu-ray?
No, not yet.
Don't, because it's Disney, isn't it?
Oh, right, okay. Right, films opening this Friday.
This Friday we've got The Accountant, which stars Ben Affleck as it's not the greatest title, is it? Really, you don't think I must go and see The Accountant, but he plays an autistic accountant for the mob who's also got some basis based upon watching the trailer, which is pretty vague. But he's autistic, he's an accountant, he works for the mob, but he's got some other skills involving guns and stuff, and it's a thriller. It does actually look. The trailer makes it look a lot more interesting than the title makes it sound. And it's done very well actually at the box office in the States. So I would be interested in checking it out. I do actually like Ben Affleck. It's a very different role for him. And it's certainly something that's piqued my interest. The other film coming out on Friday is Nocturnal Animals, which is the new film from Tom Ford, who made A Single Man. So this stars Jake Gyllenhaal, and I guess you can expect more Tom as an ex-fashion designer. They always look amazing, his films, and this will probably look incredible too. But I actually don't know very much about the plot. So, but that's if you enjoyed A Single Man and Tom Ford in general, then it might be worth checking out. Plus, Jake Gyllenhaal is always watchable, I think.
Okay, and end of the month, best film of the month was.
Well, Phil, what did you see this month? Anything interesting?
9.
Okay, I'm actually going to late entry, but I'm going to go with Doctor Strange. It's the most fun film I've seen this month. I really did enjoy it, and like I said, it was different, and it brought something new to the MCU. And it's a real cinematic experience. I mean, if you imagine Inception on acid, that's kind of basically what a lot of it looks like. And I think it's worth checking out on a bigger screen. You can find if it's doing IMAX, go and see it there. Check it out in 3D. It's great. So that would be my film of the month.
Okay, I might go and see that.
You should definitely go. Yeah, you can go and see it because you don't have to see anything else in the Marvel universe to enjoy this film. So it's totally standalone in that sense. A bit like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay, although I did enjoy Suicide Squad, even though I hadn't a clue what was going on.
Yeah,
there's always something to look at in that. Right, so that's our film of the month. Blu-ray releases. Well, I guess we can include UHD in this as well because there's not that many. So what are the releases this week?
This week we have Star Wars: The Force Awakens on 3D Blu-ray. So very cheekily, Disney did not release it in 3D back in, when was it, March, April, when they brought out the 2D Blu-ray, and they basically waited till now, obviously to tie it in with the release of Rogue One, 3D Blu-ray. But we also get a commentary track from J.J. Abrams, which was missing from the previous release, some rest of the deleted scenes that weren't included for some reason, and also a couple more featurettes on the production. So, even if you don't necessarily want the 3D version of the film, I think you're going to have to buy it if you're a completist like me, or you want all the extra bits and bobs. You're going to have to pick it up, which is it's a bit cynical on the part of Disney, if you want my opinion. They should have just added all this stuff in to the first release and given you the choice.
Yeah, but Disney don't care because you're going to go and buy it anyway. So.
Yes, I am. Let's be honest. So that's out.
I've got to say, I really enjoyed it on IMAX 3D, so I think I might actually pick this disc up. Normally I wouldn't have bothered with 3D, but I enjoyed it. I did really enjoy the experience at the cinema. So,
okay. And we've got The Neon Demon coming out as well. This is the new film from Nicholas Winding Refn, which I've got to say, I've just proofed Kaz's review. Picture and sound-wise, reference all the way. Absolutely, it looks absolutely stunning, which I would expect nothing less from Nicholas Winding Refn. And it looks like a really interesting film. It's kind of really a horror film set in the fashion world, and that in itself sounds quite appealing. It's got Elle Fanning in the lead role, who is an interesting young actress. And yeah, I've actually got this in order. I'm expecting it on Monday, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. So that's coming out. We've also got The Legend of Tarzan. This is both an Ultra HD Blu-ray and Blu-ray release, so you've got your choices there. I've already got the Ultra HD Blu-ray from the States. I haven't got around to watching it yet. I can't say that the world was crying out for another Tarzan movie, and it didn't do particularly well at the box office, unsurprisingly. But I guess for if you like, either if you're just like me and you have to buy it because it's an Ultra HD Blu-ray, or you're interested in Tarzan, or maybe you're interested in Margot Robbie, which is fair enough because she's playing Jane in it, then you can check it out. Also coming out on Ultra HD Blu-ray this week, or just been released rather the week before, is Pacific Rim, the film by Guillermo del Toro, and this has got a Dolby Atmos soundtrack, which wasn't on the original Blu-ray release, which is worth, I think, I'm sure, Ed, you can agree, it's a mighty soundtrack, and I'm looking forward to watching it in Dolby Atmos, and obviously the visuals are absolutely spectacular on this film, so I should imagine, I think it was finished at 2K, so, but adding in HDR and the wider colour gamut should make a real difference, so yeah, that could be a great Ultra HD Blu-ray to pick up.
To be honest, I do, I hate myself for loving that film, but I do.
It's a great movie.
I enjoyed it, but it's not something I would go back to time and time again.
They still managed to make it nowhere near as exciting as something with that premise should have been. But nonetheless, I mean, the Jaeger design, the effort that had gone into giving them regional variations and within the impossible physics of them, trying to make them functional. I'm a sucker for that. I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
My favourite, Ed, is when one of the monsters can release an electromagnetic pulse to knock out the Jaegers, and they go and say, "Well, we're okay because Gypsy Danger, isn't it? Gypsy Danger, she's analog."
Yeah,
what?
Yeah.
When she's got pulleys and strings, has she?
Got a steam engine in it and some valves.
Yeah. Okay. Best Blu-ray and UHD Blu-ray of the month, Steve.
Right. Blu-ray wise, I'm going to go with Captain America: Civil War. I think it's an absolutely cracking film. One of the best comic book movies I've seen in a long time that shows DC how to do it properly when you're juggling lots of different characters. Cracking film, of fantastic picture and sound, great selection of extras. Yeah, that would be my Blu-ray choice.
Was that this month?
Well, it's earlier this month, yeah, beginning of the month.
Was it really? It seems like such a long time ago.
And then in terms of Ultra HD Blu-ray, and I hate myself for saying this because I don't think the film's particularly good, but in terms of pure picture and sound, if you're looking for reference demo quality material, then X-Men Apocalypse. The disc itself is superb. It was a 4K DI. It looks superb. It sounds amazing. It's got a great Dolby Atmos soundtrack. And the film itself is a disappointment. But in terms of eye candy, then
so it's another polished turd. That's what you're saying, Steve.
It is indeed. And unfortunately, because of the clarity and quality of the picture, Oscar Isaac's makeup looks even worse than it did at the cinema. He looks like a cut-rate Doctor Who villain, under piles of blue makeup. It's poor sod.
In years to come, your collection of 4K Blu-rays is just going to be a sort of, if you like, a warning from history. This is what happens when starved of other 4K content, you just have to buy whatever there is, and you just sit there watching these highly polished turds. It's just incomprehensible to me.
Yeah, it'll be good once they start releasing some decent films on UHD, won't it, Steve?
It would be nice if they could release something that I actually want to buy, rather than feel compelled to.
Moving on swiftly, TV show of the month. For me, Still Games back. So that gets it for me. It's been absolutely brilliant. I think we're on episode 3 or 4. I think it's episode 4. It'll be episode 4 once the podcast goes out. It's been brilliant, and the introduction of Methadone Mick has been worth the whole thing. He's been absolutely hilarious. So that's my TV show of the month. Steve?
I was going to say Westworld, but I won't, because then somebody else can probably. I would suggest, if you haven't seen it yet, and this is again another Marvel project, but Luke Cage on Netflix was fantastic fun, and they really did the sort of the down at heel, low level superhero thing really well. They addressed certain issues in America right now in terms of the police and killing of black people. Which you wouldn't expect in a comic book thing, but it was really well done. It was realistic, as realistic as you can get with a character who's bulletproof. But it was a fantastic cast, set in Harlem, great music, really good show. I'd recommend it highly.
Ed?
Westworld, no question. Thanks, Steve, for you selecting something else. It's head and shoulders above anything else I'm watching on television at the moment. It just is, opening up, asking questions, just has some stunning visuals. Absolutely in love with that at the moment. My televisual highlight of the week. Really, really enjoying it.
I agree with Ed on this one. Westworld, it was something I was fairly skeptical of before it aired, because I wasn't fully sure what they could do with the concept other than, make it into the basic kind of Terminator facsimile that it really is in essence. But it's asking questions. It's a lot of kind of intrigue and mystery, and that kind of thing always draws me in.
So that's 3 for Westworld, 1 for Still Game, and Still Game gets it. Well done.
It wasn't. Luke Cage was in there as well.
Yeah, no, 2 for.
I was about to say Nick Cage. That's totally different.
Nick Cage is Luke Cage.
A man whose hair can't be destroyed.
no film script too terrible. He's immune.
Right, okay, so to wrap up on this week's Halloween podcast, we have to go there. Our favourite horror movies. I think we do this every year, and I'm almost sure we do this every year, because I always say the one for me is American Werewolf in London. Still scares the bejesus out of me. That's because I saw that as an 8-year-old when I wasn't supposed to see it. My mum went that went out shopping. We just got a Betamax, and apart from the pirate copy of E.T., there was this other tape sitting there. I shoved it in. It was American Werewolf in London, and it absolutely traumatized me as a kid. And it's just one of these movies that always gets me. And the bit that gets me is always the dream sequences.
Yeah.
They are just so weird and spooky and scary. Apart from that, I'm not really a horror fan. I don't know. Maybe that's why. Maybe because I was traumatized as a kid. I just don't like the genre. But no, it's not really a genre I enjoy that much. So that'd be my. Who's slapping somebody?
Sorry, that was a cat.
All right. So that'd be my choice because I'm not really a horror fan. Mark.
Okay, yeah, I'm not much of a horror fan myself either. There are obviously films that kind of traumatized me as a child. But as far as favourite goes, The Thing is still a film that I go back to once in a while. I still love it. It's one of those films which I like to kind of leave for a decent amount of time between rewatchings, just so it feels that little bit fresher. The effects are fantastic. I still think they hold up quite well in a kind of kitsch way, even some of the hammier ones. It's inventive with its horror as well, and I particularly like anything that's kind of sci-fi horror, anything with that element of intrigue, like that moment where you first see the ship on LV-426 and that kind of thing. You end up just kind of, you want to pause it, you want to look all around it, but they leave you kind of wanting more. And also The Thing has a great sense of ambiguity. It never fully explains everything. It leaves a chain of events that's open to interpretation. Who was infected first, that kind of thing.
Unless you speak Norwegian.
Yes, yeah, that's true. But isn't there still some element of doubt over that?
Well, I don't know, but isn't it both The Thing and the original Iron Man are completely pointless if you speak Norwegian or Pashtun respectively, because the Norwegian guys are running away going, "The dog's a murderous alien" in Norwegian, and in the original Iron Man, they give the entire plot away in Pashtun, in one of the cave sequences.
Ah.
So yeah, sorry.
No. That's a little bit like when people tried to learn, wasn't there, whatever the Native American language was from Prometheus and that kind of thing. It was. Yeah. Should we say that's taking it to extremes though? But I still think the Thing, fantastic. Go back to it, and MacReady is a great central character as well. So classic Kurt Russell, John Carpenter era.
It's also possibly the most nihilistic, depressing film ever, isn't it? I mean, it's grim right to the end. It doesn't ever let you off, and even at the very end, it still doesn't let you off.
That's the beauty of it, though. That I really love any kind of horror film where, I never really kind of got Halloween. I know that's kind of sacrilege to say, but anything that's set amongst almost like suburbia or any kind of surrounding population, I never feel has the same sense of absolute foreboding and terror of being completely isolated. There's something about the kind of more sci-fi tinged horror where you're either alone in space or you're completely cut off, and as you say, it's so kind of dark, and there's a complete lack of hope about it, where the only hope really is the fact that they kill it, and that's the end.
And they don't even give you that.
No, exactly. Although again, you come back to the sense of ambiguity. People have paused and tried to come up with all different theories as to what that ending means. Some people think that the bottle of whiskey means something. Some people think that the score, that
whether you can see the breath, the steaming breath is another thing.
Exactly. All kind of mad ideas, but it's just, as I say, brilliant and a great sense of ambiguity.
Edward?
Well, I hate horror.
I'm really glad I chose this.
I don't remember watching something as an 8-year-old that traumatized me. I just don't get on with it. It's not the response I'm seeking from things that I watch. But I suppose if we're going to do this on things that have loosened my bowel most effectively, that would be the Japanese version of Dark Water. I've never been so terrified of a Hello Kitty bag. It's just horrendous. Yes, I will now have to go and drink something stiff because I've reminded myself of that infernal bloody film. But yeah, that for me is by far and away the most effective of its type.
I guess in the future, Steve, you'll be putting out an email beforehand saying, has anybody seen these things before we discuss them?
Yes. It seemed like an obvious discussion point with Halloween, but since most of you don't seem to like horror films, it does narrow it down a bit. Can I just say, in reference to The Thing and also American Werewolf in London, both of them, interestingly, have just recently had Blu-ray reissues in the States with brand new remastered prints that look significantly better. Particularly American Werewolf in London. I've never seen it look so good. It looks superb now on the new Blu-ray film. And The Thing has had a complete remaster. I think it's done a 2K remaster for the original camera negative with Dean Cundy colour timing the whole film again properly. And again, it looks very different. It had a very blue tinge before. Now it's got a more natural looking. Ice looks like ice and skin looks like skin. And lots of extras as well on that disc that are worth getting. So both those have had really good reissues just in the last couple of weeks. Personally, in terms of horror films, I mean, the one film that still, because I was raised a Catholic as a kid and was an altar boy and everything, The Exorcist really affected me on many levels as a child watching it, not just because it is quite scary and also quite graphic and would never, ever be made today. It's also what I love about the film is that Friedkin plays it totally straight the whole way through. It's almost documentary in its approach. And that just makes you feel like the film is, you aren't as much watching a film as watching a documentary about something supernatural happening. I think it's got a great cast. It's got a grim early 70s look to it. And his background in documentaries really comes through in that movie because by playing the horror completely straight, he makes it all the more effective. But I will add, just because I happened to see it this week, I'm going to add a special mention to The Woman in Black, which I've got to say, I still rate as one of the absolute scariest experiences I've ever seen in a film, where it just doesn't let up for the entire running time. Right until the very end, you're just not let off the hook in terms of cranking up the tension and the scares. So I think they did a really good job on that. It's kind of an old school horror film. And
Are you talking about the Daniel Radcliffe one?
Yes, I am. And a bit like American Werewolf in some respects, or other films, maybe Poltergeist. But it's kind of a gateway horror film, I think, for a lot of kids, because it should never have been given a 12A certificate. It's way too graphic and scary. And it's about a ghost that murders children. So, I mean, the subject matter itself is quite unpleasant for children. But I bet a lot of kids seeing that who were traumatized, I think it got like the most complaints that year to the BBFC from parents taking their kids to see the new Daniel Radcliffe film and then utterly traumatizing them. But I guess like a lot of times that becomes the gateway film for them into the whole world of horror and the horror genre. I mean, it could also do what it did to Phil and put them off completely. But
the lady who sourced a lot of those unbelievably horrendous Victorian toys which litter the house actually attends the same U3A group as my mum, and she's really lovely. She just has a knack for finding horrible things.
They were really unsettling, weren't they?
Yeah, none of them were made for the film. They are the genuine article. Obviously, this is one of the reasons why Victorian children were messed up. But yeah, that I have to agree. I did watch that, and yes, that has moments of. And once again, also, it symbolizes that poor old Daniel Radcliffe, he is capable of some cracking performances, but the poor bloke is just forever Harry Potter. You know? Yeah. I thought he was really good in that, but
he was excellent in it.
All splendid.
And that's how we cover Halloween on a podcast with 4 wusses.
I've got to say, one of the things I love about watching a film I'm familiar with, a scary film, is when the shocks are coming. So rather than watching the screen, I was watching the people that were watching it with me, waiting for them to jump out of their skins at various moments.
Yeah, I remember I went to see Aliens at Abbey Road because they did the soundtrack. So we sat in the Abbey Road sort of auditorium, and it was the most 80s presentation ever. But the woman in front of me had never seen it. And it was I sort of watched it vicariously through her, and it took every fiber of my self-control not to grab her by the shoulder when the face hugger goes up against the tank thing, because I think they'd have had to pull her out of the lighting gantry. But I didn't, because I'm not a truly terrible human being. But yes, there was a certain satisfaction to that.
I mean, you touched on something there, Steve, which I think is really quite important, that in terms of filmmaking, it's probably the most difficult genre to get right, because it's all about timing, it's all about building up suspense, and it's all about the shock factor. And I think because of that, they get very formulaic very quickly, horror films, and they all tend to follow the same. I mean, the whole slasher thing. I mean, the thing that Scream basically took the mickey out of, and became such a great film because of it. And that was basically him saying, well, enough. Wes Craven saying, well, enough's enough. You know, it's getting too formulaic now. Everything's the same.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And then if you look at some of the more recent horror films like The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2 and all this sort of stuff, there's been a trend towards what people call cattle prod horror films, where basically quiet, boom, quiet, boom, and there's a rhythm to it. You can pretty quickly get into that rhythm, and you know when the next jump scare is coming. Next, you can use dynamic range in the soundtrack, and just going quiet. You know, it starts to get quiet, and you think, okay, they're going to do something loud in a second, and then they do something really loud and they scare you. But it's not real. It isn't real terror. It's just just shocks. Whereas certain films, and I've got to say that I think The Woman in Black does this very well, is it creates an uneasy feeling from the very beginning, and it just keeps building that tension. But you're right, the slasher movies became formulaic, and Scream did a brilliant job of taking the piss out of them. Also, Scream achieved that rare thing, which the only other film I can think of that's actually nailed it, you've already mentioned it, is American Werewolf in London, because American Werewolf in London is genuinely scary and genuinely funny.
Oh yeah, it's really funny.
Really difficult thing to do. Scream does it. Scream is also very funny, very knowing, nodding to the audience a few times, but it's also quite scary at places. So that ability to do the frightening. I mean, I guess you could say both are similar genres in the sense that horror can be difficult to do unless you get the timing and the atmosphere right. Same with comedy. Comedy being very difficult to do. Comedy is all about timing. So getting the two together is almost impossible. And American Werewolf in London stands out as being one of the few films, possibly the only film, that truly nails terror and humour in the same movie. It's just interesting to see how, I mean, horror films more than any other genre probably go through cycles where one thing becomes popular, like slasher, for example, and then they keep doing it. Then there was a bit where it was torture porn, wasn't it? And it was just how far can we push it in terms of the graphic.
I think the big change though came from, and hopefully Mark will be able to comment on this. It came from Japanese cinema, didn't it, Mark? With the likes of Ringu and Dark Water and that kind of thing. I mean, that's where a lot of the change in horror came round about the sort of mid-90s.
Yeah, they used technology particularly well. It was a good time to kind of utilise that factor. So first VHS tapes with Ringu, and then you had phones and things like that. But also, as with Steve mentioned, The Woman in Black, it was that air of just unsettling for large periods of time. The idea of just kind of, rather than having just a flash of something, ending up with just focusing on something that it just seems deeply unsettling, even though there's no inherent danger in it. So rather than having, you don't have to have a monster running at you, as Ed said about being scared of a Hello Kitty bag. It just has to be kind of almost weird and creepy enough that you can build atmosphere around it.
Psychological thriller, isn't it? That's what the Japanese really nailed, especially with the young girl with the long dark hair dripping wet with water, and that was really taking the mickey of not that far into the future after that happened, but at the time that was genuinely scary, something like that, because you'd never see it. And you really hit the nail on the head there. The camera lingers on it. It's not like a quick jump in your seat or something jumping out at you. The camera actually lingers on this character as they come crawling towards you.
Yeah, if you've seen It Follows, which I think came out, I think maybe last year, but that really captures that sense of there's this thing basically you get cursed, and it takes influence very much from those Japanese horror films. You get cursed, the curse gets passed from one person to the other, and then this thing just follows you, and it's just in the distance, constantly walking towards you, at a specific pace. And that sounds kind of silly, but in the film it really works, because she looks out the window, there it is walking toward, and that sense of unease is just carried throughout the entire film, and that definitely took its influence from those Japanese horror films that Mark's just been talking about.
So I think we did rather well there, seeming as three of us don't like horror movies at all. I think we managed to cover that. If you have your suggestions for your favourite horrors, or films that the mainstream haven't really caught on yet, like how the Japanese films kind of happened by word of mouth to start with, and then got their Hollywood remakes. And is there a new genre that we should be looking out for? If you've got anything like that, then add it to the podcast forum. And that's it for this week. My thanks to Steve Withers.
But they said you were dead. You must be double dead.
Ed Selly.
That's not Sandy Claus.
And Mark Botright.
Nice work, Bone Daddy.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums, the latest reviews, news and video, and of course, leave us those 5-star ratings on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.